This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto and Knuckles OX. Before we begin, as I'm pretty sure you guys will want more of this story, I'm actually going to be asking you to get this video up to 2,000 likes in order to secure part 2 and keep this series from being a Patreon exclusive series until we finish it on Patreon and can bring it over here to YouTube to upload fully. Also, before we begin, be sure to take a look at this screenshot for my analytics and subscribe, since about 90% of you guys actually are not yet, and you never know, your subscription may be the one that pushes us over a big threshold to get a big news milestone. And one last thing, we're going to go ahead and shout the wonderful supporters of the channel whom have channel memberships and Patreon pledges, starting with Dominique, Pizza15X, Aaron Winters, Normandy1998, Shao Pai, Coder SV3, Ronan Charizard, Daniel Smith, Drax, Dylan Wolfdog31, Infernate Beast 326, Jay Uray, Johnny, Narku, Omar Cousins, Snow Slash Memes and more. Stephen Norton, Terran, The Shadows, Vegeta What Ifs, Alamancer, B, Blood Down, Inebriated, John Sullivan, Trent Rouse, Dark Shadow, Pokemon Trainer Cam, River Joy, Elijah Edwards, Mr. Hamtastic, Jesus is King, Half an Onion, and Angel Gonzalez. Thanks for all your direct support and allowing me to do new and wacky creative ideas with new experimental editing styles like this video. And please enjoy the show. Now, in Dragon Ball What If scenarios, usually during the Saiyan saga, the question always comes up: why not use the time chamber? To the point that myself and lots of other creators who tackle these stories usually either have to wave off the idea entirely as something that wouldn't work outside of the story, or while speaking for the characters we come up with an excuse to not do so. The reason for this is fairly simple. The time chamber is an incredibly broken tool, and if used too early in a story by certain characters, can suck away all the tension of the story. Goku as a 15-year-old after his defeat of King Piccolo and around a power level of 260 was only able to last a month in the room while alone. My personal headcanon, however, is that he definitely could have gone at least 3 months or so had he not been in there alone, since the mental strain combined with the physical strain likely contributed to his giving up so early. And for most of the other heavily social characters, a similar situation would likely take place. Wait, can you consider Goku heavily social? I mean, the guy will go like 10 years without talking to people. Regardless, this means we can assume that this is probably the minimum level one can be at to survive at least an entire month. Or, if we want to be generous, we can maybe double this as 2 months if a person has a partner to train with while inside. If this is the case, then to make it an entire year in the chamber, I think it's fair to require a warrior be at least as strong as Raditz. So, in this story, we're going to try and explore what the consequences would be if the first characters who had a good opportunity and a reason to use the time chamber did so. These, of course, being the Z Fighters on Earth preparing for the invasion of the Saiyans. A few months into their training, Kami recognizes that the humans have passed the threshold it took Goku and Piccolo to reach in order to defeat Raditz. But this realization causes the god of Earth more worried than anything, as he can already see their progress beginning to slow to a crawl. He is able to sense Piccolo's power growing in the distance, and while he has definitely claimed the title of World's Strongest in Goku's absence, he simply cannot shake the feeling that if they continue as they are currently, something bad is going to happen. In light of these troubling thoughts clouding his mind, he decides to simply get hard proof of what their odds are. And so for a few days, enters an incredibly deep meditation as he tries to sense the power of the oncoming Saiyans. He can certainly feel their evil-tinted ki closing in on his planet, but he can't get an accurate reading, and all his training eventually sees him accidentally contacting King Kai, who reprimands him for sending out such loud and annoying psionic signals into the cosmos. Embarrassed, the lower deity apologizes, but takes this opportunity to counsel with the North Kai, asking on updates for Goku's progress, and also a clear estimate on their opponent's strength. However, the former is harder to do, as King Kai reveals the Saiyans still had not arrived just yet, but by his estimate should make it by the end of the month at the latest. This doesn't bode well for Kami, but he focuses on getting those estimates. Huffing at how much of a warrior Kami is being, King Kai complied, and after feeling Vegeta and Nappa's power, puts it in terms that are understandable, citing the weakest of the invaders as equal to a little over 2 of Raditz, closer to about 5 if he really got serious. This makes Kami gulp nervously, as he bravely asks about the other, this one making King Kai a bit clammy, as he is the most dangerous one, equal to 12 of Raditz. At this, the North Kai can sense Kami's despair, and so while he's being objective with him, decides he may as well inform them they also have the ability to plant creatures called Cybermen, which are each equal to Raditz himself, and they have 6 of those. Kami can't help but rightfully lose hope, as the odds all seem against them. However, even in his advanced age, he does remember the one last ace up their sleeve, and sensing this spark of hope, King Kai asks him to elaborate. And thus, upon hearing of the Roman spirit in time, the higher deity dryly calls Kami an airheaded old coot, asking why in the 4 quadrants he'd even hesitated to use such a powerfully rare tool found on so few planets. In turn, being informed of Goku's time in the chamber, King Kai thinks on this for a moment, only to reiterate his opinion, stating that Goku at the time wasn't facing the threat of his entire planet being destroyed, rather just going under new management if Kami's description of King Piccolo and his son were accurate. It wasn't like everyone in the world would have died, though from what he learned so far of the Earth-raised Saiyan, that may not have affected his motivation much. But he is 100% certain it would affect that of those humans he was currently training. Furthermore, if all are currently stronger than Goku was at the time, then their odds of success are as well. And the linchpin to his argument, they were all set to die anyway if things went sideways. He'd be training Goku as hard as he can the low chance he passed his tests, but having an insurance policy never hurt in the Kai's eyes, as there's no logical way 2 years of training wouldn't be better than just one. He then begins to blab on about how sweet his car is while Kami goes quiet in contemplation. And so after a bit of no response, King Kai bids Kami farewell rather awkwardly, asking him to keep it down from then on and giving the update that Goku seems to be a bit closer, wisely suggesting they keep their time chamber plan a secret from him so he doesn't affect his focus for now. With this bit of telepathic counsel done, Kami next decides to convene with his other half, interrupting Piccolo during a sparring session he's having with a multiform clone of himself not all that far away from where he ditched Gohan in order to toughen the crybaby up. While the young demon is initially irritated and demanding the old god leave him be, Kami speaks with some authority and more backbone than Piccolo is used to, asserting that he's only seeking to get the new Demon King's input on an important decision, and so fills Piccolo in on the time chamber and the conversation he just had with King Kai. Piccolo listens carefully, even eventually pausing his spar and relaxing to better focus. When Kami is done though, he very much has the same opinion as King Kai, stating there's no legitimate reason not to throw caution to the wind here. At least in the cases for those never revived with the Dragon Balls before, since even if they did croak, they could still get a reward out of it. No, his real question was why Kami wants his input. And to this, the God of Earth decides not to disclose his view of the situation that his other half's heart is slowly beginning to purify, instead wisely deciding to stroke the demon's ego by claiming that he believes Piccolo is the only creature on the planet who could endure the time chamber without issue due to his determination, lack of food needs, and lone wolf nature. Piccolo somewhat sees through this false praise, but still ends up puffing his chest out at hearing Kami mention his good qualities for once. Due to this, he somewhat becomes ever so slightly more amiable, and so tells Kami what their game plan should be, stating they should finish out the year of training as planned for now, or rather, the next 11 months worth of training, using that 12th month to be safe and enter the time chamber for a day each, and then the remaining time before the Saiyan's arrival to master whatever power or skills they attain during that time, citing that now that the option is available to him, he believes Gohan will need it just to get in the shape needed for something his father couldn't endure, much less fighting on the actual battlefield. Beyond this, it would also ensure they could all get way stronger than Son Goku was when he last entered to lessen the strain on themselves. And upon cooking up the new training regimen him and Gohan can undergo after this first year, he also offers Kami the advice of having his fighters go 2 by 2, very obviously having taken the spot as Gohan's training partner for himself. Kami agrees this is likely the wisest plan possible, but argues that they should make sure their allies are aware of this and won't have this challenge sprung on them last minute, something Piccolo begrudgingly agrees to, not letting on to the fact that he has no intention to deal with Gohan directly again until he shows him some fighting spirit, and thus their conversation ends as Kami stops training for the day in order to tell everyone the news. The reactions vary somewhat widely. Yamcha and to a slightly lesser extent Krillin are a bit daunted by a challenge their friend couldn't overcome. However, in the case of Krillin, he tries to encourage Yamcha that they should try anyway. That's just what Goku would do, agreeing to the challenge even though if something goes wrong here, he would not be able to come back a second time, at least to his knowledge right now. Seeing this courage from his friend and rival, and remembering he is still his elder, Yamcha resolves himself, even determining to train himself harder in the here and now to ensure the worst can't happen for him nor his friends. Tenshinhan is the exact opposite, growing incredibly hungry for an opportunity to do something his rival could in fact not do, while Chaozu feels some apprehension, but in the end, he is easily able to feed off of and become emboldened by Ten's strength and willpower. Finally, Yajirobe seems upset by the prospect of more training. However, upon thinking about it some more and hearing what it's like in the chamber, he becomes intrigued. To him, a year away from everyone with all-you-can-eat food sounded great. However, he would at the very least like to do it as Goku did, alone, though Kami quickly shuts this down for the issue of safety. And quick author's note, this interpretation of Yajirobe's view of the time chamber is completely taken from Moscow X's videos. Also, you should probably go check out What If Yajirobe is a Z Fighter. It's actually a really similar concept in the way it's trying to play with some more irrelevant characters in some people's eyes to do some more relevant things. So, in the end, everyone is mostly very accepting of the idea. Even Gohan, when Piccolo finally posed it to him a few months into their actual training, since the kid is good at math, and 2 is indeed better than 1 here. However, also as the author, I have to recognize this view of the situation can certainly be boiled down to the fact that this story's premise is also partially what if the Z Fighters were making only the most optimal choices for their survival at all times. This also brings up a question I have for you guys, though I won't really bring it up in this specific instance of the story, but do you think with all these kind of stakes that Kami would make everyone drink the Ultra Divine Water if they had not already? Just for the extra bit of insurance the Time Chamber doesn't kill them due to Tenkaichi's words. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, we'll call that one of the questions of the day. Jumping back to our story, 11 months or so passed, bringing our heroes to these current power rankings. Piccolo at a level of 3157, Gohan at a max power level of 2567, Tien at a power level of 1647, Krillin coming in at a power level of 1606, Yamcha coming in at a power level of 1338, Yajirobe just barely keeping himself out of last place at a power level of 878, and Chaozu coming in at last with a power level of 550. On the day of the first pair entering, everyone gathers on the lookout for a bit of orientation for the chamber and a refresher of his rules. However, to Kami's shock, Piccolo asserts that he and Gohan will be entering last, partially to observe everyone else's results, and partially took advantage of the last few days of training here on the lookout. More than Kami, everyone is a bit surprised at this courteousness, but as Tien steps up to be the first to go in with Chaozu at his side, Piccolo calls for them to wait, bluntly pointing out that as weak as the sidekick is compared to the Triclops, he would only be good for keeping his friend company rather than actually helping him power up. And thus, he actually points to Krillin, demanding the two of them partner up and form a duo. Then, as if to fix the mismatch he has just made, he looks to Yajirobe and states Chaozu is much better suited to train with the fat one. Finally, he looks to Yamcha and recognizes they don't currently have enough people for him to have a training partner as well. That is, unless Kami and Popo give up their pacifism. Regardless of his attempt to be sociable, Tien and the others begin to argue with Piccolo, only for Mr. Popo to surprisingly back what Piccolo is saying, stating it doesn't make sense to do this and squander the possible benefits of the training. Hearing this wisdom from one of their newest and strongest masters, the humans can't help but concede. Well, Yajirobe actually doesn't care all that much, instead turning to Chaozu and rudely telling him to keep to himself when they are training. Confused, Yamcha begins asking what they'll be doing about his partner, but Kami assuages his fears, saying the answer will become clear this time tomorrow. And so, with these matters settled, it is that Krillin and Tenshinhan enter the Time Chamber, with more resolve to get stronger than ever as they begin a harsh year of training together under 10 times Earth gravity, motivated by the knowledge that Goku is currently doing just that as well, and so not being very daunted when it takes some time to get used to. Instead, improving on the new techniques they created over just the last year, and older, seemingly more basic maneuvers they thought had reached the absolute zenith of what was possible. However, in raw terms of how strong they grow, I will save all that power scaling for the very end, as more than likely, many will disagree with my numbers. On the next day, as the once bald duo now step out as the unequivocally strongest beings to ever live on this planet, everyone else is given solid proof of this plan's success. However, even with this vote of confidence, Yamcha is still curious if he will have to go it alone, only for Mr. Popo to suddenly appear back on the lookout after having left with no one noticing, and with him is Master Roshi. Kami explains that when he decided to go through with using the time chamber, he'd asked the old master to come on out of retirement for just a bit longer in order to help his students. And so Roshi reveals he hasn't been slacking off for the year, now somehow boasting a power level only a little lower than Mr. Popo's, and thus Yamcha's. Here, he expresses his pride in both Krillin and Tenshinhan, and thus is now more fired up than ever to help a student of his whom has always been the slowest on the uptake, shooing Yamcha inside the chamber, and once locked inside, revealing to him that they take on this year of training by working hard, sleeping hard, and as he reveals a capsule full of dirty magazine, explains that he even has how they'll be playing hard covered, which Yamcha has to admit is pretty gross, even if a brilliant way to pass the time in this brutal environment. The next day when they emerge, there's a similar reaction from the others as the previous, and though it is obvious Master Roshi has worked himself hard, it seems as if he has spent even more time training, honing, and supporting Yamcha's growth and skill, as his entire vibe seems to have matured greatly, as he has even taken on a haircut in preparation for this new threat. However, he is still only the slightest bit weaker than Tenshinhan and Krillin. And speaking of, over the day, those two had spoken with the others about their experience, giving tips and tricks for how they learned to best pass the time. And now with Yamcha and Roshi having gone through everything, even more knowledge can be added to the collective. However, both are rather tight-lipped about their strategy outside of simply repeating the Turtle Skull mantra. Even though they are given the option to cut in line, Piccolo still claims the last spot, with Gohan now at least seeming a tiny bit more confident with Krillin's encouragement. Thus, it is now finally Chaozu and Yajirobe's turn. Tien offers his best buddy some further encouragement and advice, and reiterates his threat to the Ronin that if he were to mistreat his companion over the year, then he'd be dealing with him afterwards. So either be friendly and train well together, or train in preparation for something more dangerous than a Saiyan. The swordsman in turn plays this off as if he isn't intimidated, but as he's only truly known Tenshinhan closely for a year now, he can't help but take this seriously, and so makes a crude remark and tells Chaozu to get his creepy butt in the chamber, flinching when Tien moves towards the door just before it closes. On the outside, Master Roshi, now feeling pretty good about himself, decides he's going to head back to Kame House since he may be needed for the collection of the Dragon Balls to retrieve Goku. But in this declaration, Krillin halts him, asking to make a slight update to their wish in lieu of his newfound strength. Roshi nods sagely when his student finishes, agreeing that this task is more than doable now that even he is strong enough to take that punk out. Before to everyone's shock, instead of riding back with Mr. Popo, the old man jumps from the lookout. Krillin with a split drop asks Yamcha if he taught their master how to fly over the year, only for the former bandit to laugh the question off, saying yeah, more or less, and suddenly a loud boom sounds off, as Roshi's laughter echoes. Everyone looking down to see the old man flying, or rather falling in style by kicking the air hard enough to make shockwaves to ride on. From here, those who have already gone through their training, save for Yamcha, who decides he needs to go apologize to Bulma for something, help train Piccolo and Gohan, though this is mostly true for Gohan rather than the demon, as they can't really feel the change in his heart as Kami can, whom at the moment actually has realized that most of his stress has already melted away, simply by the success of Krillin alone. Meanwhile, in the time chamber, Yajirobe has kept 210's threat, only spending a relatively minuscule amount of time eating and sleeping on his own, and the remainder training with Chaozu. Slowly coming to realize, even though he had a sharp wit and gumption to be annoying and hurtful with his insults, the little guy was a pretty chill dude all things considered, never calling him outside of his name unless he did so to him first, and always willing to give him alone time while he works on seeing if it was possible to contact him with telepathy from this strange dimension, unaware of the sheer fact that this act in and of itself is training for his Esper abilities, until Yajirobe points it out during a spar by their halfway point, citing that he thinks Chaozu may be way stronger than even him, though the psychic does suggest his enhanced abilities to be far more manageable if his target weren't so lazy. And thus, when they emerge, Yajirobe has similarly grown by balance unthought of, and while Chaozu seems to have grown far less so, the Ronin sticks up for the shorty, smugly claiming that Chaozu's ki alone was by no means the true measure of his strength, as he was just as equally as powerful in the psychic energy and the spirit. Thus, it is finally drawn time for Gohan and Piccolo, the two whom from the beginning were set to gain the most from this challenge, as now that Gohan has had a solid year to build a foundation, Piccolo may now reap the benefit of building on it for another year in this harsh environment. And from Gohan's perspective, Piccolo's budding heart now has even more time to grow, as evidenced by the first order of business being for the child to eat his fill and try to sleep, in hopes that this will help acclimate him to the gravity, while Piccolo of course will be meditating. And son Gohan is truly thankful for the rest time after 3 fairly harsh days of training on the outside, though has to wonder if this was all inspired by that school mantra Roshi and Yamcha kept saying that he could have sworn he'd heard from Goku at least once or twice. The two get themselves situated, and while there's still a good deal of physical sparring, Piccolo actually sees more benefit in teaching Gohan to master his mind and spirit now, having him meditate alongside him and demonstrating image training for him along the way. This combined with just an entire extra year to mature does wonders for the now 6-year-old Hybrid Saiyan, as he gets the extra time needed to harden his resolve and come to terms with the dangers they're soon to face, meaning he won't be freezing up in critical moments. Aside from this, due to his potential, the power increase he sees ends up dwarfing all those who'd come before him, in return leading to Piccolo's strength also growing at a rate no one could have predicted, even if comparatively far less impressive compared to Gohan's definitively earning the title Prodigy. Not to mention, he's become fairly proud of the boy, and also somewhat thankful he taught him so much control before this power was attained, as if he still had no control, it could truly spell a greater disaster than the Saiyans could ever pose. When they emerge, once again, everyone is in total shock at their full power, with both fighters quickly recognizing they'd forgotten to tone it down, and apologizing for the fright as they suppressed themselves. Then, confidently after reaching out to feel the approaching enemy only a few weeks away, Piccolo smirks and claims the two of them won't be wasting their time on this any further, as he is now even able to calculate an approximate arrival time, as well as forewarn where their pods will land with their current direction. He then softens his features with a genuine smile, speaking of a promise to take Gohan home and apologize to his mother. Gohan reminding them more of Goku than ever as he sports wild hair and a freshly regrown tail with more confidence bows his head to everyone, thanking them for all their knowledge and support, before he and Piccolo disappear and cross the distance between the Lookout and Mount Paozu at previously unimaginable speeds. With this, the rest of the month is spent with everyone polishing up their skills, as Goku is finally ready to be revived, and with him, due to Krillin's request, Roshi modifies the wish, resulting in the good Saiyan soul not being the only one to return from the other world. The next day at 11:43 AM, 2 pods crash land on the planet in a populated city. The proud Saiyan warriors inside giving the Earth a quick glimpse of their genocidal greeting, as they move on to seek out the Dragon Balls and the planet's defenders. However, these pitiful creatures obviously cannot stand up to the might of the Saiyans, and so simply by coming face to face with them do they concede to the battle, and offer their undying loyalty as well as the Dragon Balls. Pleased with this, the prince decides to show mercy and take his new underlings up on this offer, ordering them to summon this dragon form. As Shenron awakens, he too bows to Saiyan supremacy, offering the two their desired immortality and thus making them invincible, As with a newly buffed up crew and the ability for endless Zenkai boost, Prince Vegeta declares war on Emperor Frieza. Then, the next day at 11:43 AM, 2 pods crash land on the planet. Meanwhile with Goku, to the best of his knowledge, he is still meant to be rushing down Snake Way. However, when he finally makes it back from the check-in station, Kami is in no hurry, simply greeting him warmly and saying he's happy his training seemed fruitful. As Goku is obviously in a hurry and confused by this, the God of Earth waves him off, deciding that showing would be easier than telling, and so instantly transports the two of them to the lookout where Goku finds an unbelievable sight. 2 Saiyan pods with fairly powerful occupants inside them, sleeping and having good dreams based on their manic grins and slight twitching, as they are currently under the power of an eerie glow surrounding them. As that same glow is currently surrounding his psychic friend Chaozu, whom he now recognizes is currently far stronger than himself. In fact, this goes for all his friends, whom are all crowded around the psychic asking how some mysterious task is coming, as he doesn't even seem to be focused on the Sun Ring invaders. And even more shocking is the voice that cuts in behind him, shakily asking what the meaning of all this is, as he turns to see his older brother Raditz alive and in the flesh, having nearly missed his presence entirely due to how comparatively small his power was even with the slight boost from being revived. Now, this is where we'll be leaving the story off for right now, unless you guys end up hitting that like goal, and this won't be kind of a Patreon exclusive series, it'll kind of be a main series that's happening here on the channel as well. You'll see, you'll know how to do it. Yes, I will finally give you guys the power levels I decided on for this part, and also try to explain the math I got behind them. So I got these by taking everyone's pre-Saiyan Saga power levels, whether they're by conjecture or just fan estimates or not, and kind of divided them by their Daizenshuu Saiyan Saga power levels to get a number by how much stronger they got within that year. I then broke that number into 12ths and took 1 away before the time chamber. And then to make my math a bit more simple once they got in the time chamber, I decided to make the number they got stronger, that base amount they got stronger by the year, and just multiply it by a factor of 10. So for example, Krillin originally got 8.6 times stronger in a year, going from 206 to 1770. So minus a month, that would take him up by 7.32 times before the time chamber, and then once inside with Ten Shinhan, he got an additional 86 times increase to his base, which resulted in him becoming the strongest human at a power level of 138,185, which to me felt pretty consistent since as he is younger, he should have more potential than Ten Shinhan. Then with the last weeks of the year, I took that as an excuse to make everyone have a nice pretty even number. So this resulted in Krillin's final number being 139k, Ten Shinhan's being 121k, Yamcha's being 113k, Yajirobe's 81k, and Chaozu 24k, though with the whole psychic energy explanation I was given, that could be closer to 48k going all out, just kind of mixing his ki and his psychic power together. Master Roshi was actually the third hardest to decide because after the initial boost from his last 180 power level to be comparable to Mr. Popo, I decided it would only be fair to increase him by only a really small bit since he is meant to be retired, and even then placing him at like 16k, I still let him overtake Goku in base at this time. So super impressive, not denying how much that is already kind of breaking the story at this point already. Now see, finally is my most controversial decisions regarding Piccolo and Gohan. And this all hinges on Gohan, since we could have easily given Piccolo the same 86 times increase as Krillin inside the time chamber had he went in alone. But Gohan is such an outlier, he kind of messed that up. Remember, his original resting power level with nothing wonky happening in canon, just the base story we got, was 1. And then against Nappa, he achieved a power level of 2800. Through a rage-filled Masenko, mind you, which is still twice as powerful as the blow against Raditz that nearly killed him, but still, it was 2800. So it could in fact be argued that he got anywhere from twice as strong, all the way to 2800 times as strong in just that first year. And since we're already in the realm of wackiness, I obviously went the more insane option, and I still threw the 10 times multiplier on for good measure, since if we're breaking the store, we may as well demolish it, rather than simply crack it a tad and just build something new from the dust. Growing 28,000 times stronger, I placed Gohan at a power level of 18 million when calm and based. However, his meditation has given him a great control over his emotions and allows him to increase his strength 2 to 5 times at will with no real drawbacks. The only reason Goku or anyone else hadn't immediately sensed Gohan was due to his liking to keep himself relaxed at a resting level of 1 still. While Piccolo would have still been able to mollywop Grade 8 Vegeta even without the influence Gohan's power is giving him here, I still decided to give him a Gohan training buddy booster, and decided to place him at a final power level of 9 million, or about half as strong as regular Gohan. And honestly, for everyone but Gohan, I'm really happy with these numbers because most don't exceed Captain Ginyu, and this was only obtainable with higher gravity plus good training partners. And with some characters, like especially Krillin, seems about what they could have managed in 2 years given all they had to the max. Like I said, Krillin especially makes me like this way of viewing everything a lot more because it's only a little under double what he was after his full potential being unlocked. So all in all, I really hope you guys enjoyed this fairly off-the-wall start to what I think will end up being maybe a 4 to 5 part miniseries, as I'm sure most of you are assuming this just ends with the humans eventually becoming irrelevant and the Saiyans all turning good and becoming super strong badasses by the very next part. That's not exactly how I mean to play it, but I can't say that with these massive advantages, at least the Frieza arc may be a teeny bit easier than we're used to. However, from there, it's up in the air, as I still have a good few tricks up my sleeve. So if you are indeed interested by this idea, remember 3,000 likes and I'll knock out a part 2 and go ahead and make this a non-Patreon exclusive, and have fun screaming at me in the comments about scaling. I'll appreciate the algorithm fuel. As always, be sure to take care of yourselves and the world around you, go beyond plus ultra, and I'll see you guys next time.